Right. I'm going to call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting for December 18th, 2025. I will ask for the clerk to call roll.
Baldwin.
Here.
Fedrick.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Gaunt.
Here.
Lachey is out, and Marino.
Here.
Mans.
Here. Yes, Mark, sent us, Grayson and I a message. He's not feeling well. We told him that we hope he's better soon. And that we totally understand. We also appreciate that he didn't take a chance on exposing anybody else.
Yes.
Especially at this time of the year. Wish him happy holidays and then we'll see him in 2026. Everyone received in their packet the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there any changes to it? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. We also received in our packet the minutes for our regular meeting from November 20th, 2025. I read through them. They seem to be in good shape. Everybody else have an opportunity to read through. Any comments? If not, motion to approve them.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the November 20th meeting.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. Which now takes us on to agenda item number 4, which is public comments on agenda items. If you're in the room and like to speak, or if you're online, just kind of give us a hand raise and we'll recognize you. At the time that you're coming up to speak, just give us your name, your address, let us know what agenda item you'll be speaking to, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, please. In the room, we have no one. Online, I don't see any hands up, so that will close out the public comment on the agenda items. Moving us on to new business. The first item on new business is the 640 Water Street, which will be a public hearing. So at this time, we will open up the public hearing for 640 Water. What I will ask is the zoning administrator to kind of give us a summary of what we have in the kits, as well as the updated items that we have been distributed here this evening.
So the applicant's proposing the redevelopment of 640 Water Street, which is located within the downtown waterfront preservation district through the approval of a PUD. They plan to replace the existing one-story commercial building with a mixed-use two-story building that has a retail component on the first floor and short-term rentals on the second floor. The proposed footprint occupies much of the lot and would require several dimensional deviations that are permitted through the PUD process. And those include a 0-foot front setback and parking lot setback, as well as a reduced waterfront setback of 15 feet. And while the downtown waterfront preservation district is exempt from minimum parking requirements, the amended site plan does provide 3 parking spaces in lieu of the originally proposed 4 spaces, which then allows for the commercial waste receptacle to be in setback compliance. The application appears to generally meet the eligibility criteria, guidelines, and requirements of PUD, except that there is not a proposed walkway connecting the public right-of-way to the waterfront, specifically for pedestrian access. A main goal of the downtown preservation district is to expand public access to the waterway, and we'd feel that a pedestrian pathway in agreement with the neighboring property, which would grant better public access, or some appropriate signage indicating that the waterfront is open to the public, could be suitable. Typically allowing access to the waterway through a drive aisle would not be recommended for public safety, but this could potentially be mitigated by limiting the on-site parking solely to the second story units rather than having them available for the first floor retail use. And aside from consideration of the public access to the waterway, the applicant would need to provide legal documentation of single ownership or control of the property, a schedule or timeline of the intended development, and a draft of ownership and governance documents as provided on page 14 of the staff report.
Everyone good with that? Yeah. Okay. Next, we'll move on to the presentation by the applicant. I believe we have Daniel, the applicant, Boggs, online. Daniel, would you like to say?
Yes. Yes. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Daniel Boggs. I'm the architect for the project, and I'm representing AMK Properties. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. just to give a brief description of the project here. Right now right now this sheet is showing several different perspective views of the exterior of the proposed building. The building is going to be clad in fiber cement siding, which is a siding that will really give you a wood appearance, but will be more durable than typical wood. I also have some pictures over here in the top left here that give you a little better feeling of what the building's going to look like when it's completed.
Mr. Boggs,
Yes.
Boggs, does that differ from the renderings that were included in the packet?
No, that's the same as the packet.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Right now I'm showing my screen here, the site plan. You can see Water Street is located right on the right-hand side here, and the Kalamazoo River is on the left-hand side. The the two-story building is located here at the dark shaded area. And as you enter from the existing driveway, we've shown 3 parking spaces. Actually, let me use the revised plan. That would be better. You, I think you may have seen this yet. I'm not sure, but if not,
Hey, Daniel, the revised plan was handed out to everybody. It's the large pages that are there in front of your seat. It's the seat.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
As you come in the driveway, there's 3 parking spaces. These spaces are going to be devoted to the residential short-term rental spaces that are above, so they will not get a lot of use. There will not be a lot of traffic going in and out of this parking area here. We're also showing the dumpster enclosure at this location, which is within the setbacks that are currently proposed. Also, this green stripe along here represents the public access that we're giving as part of this project being a PUD. Access can be gained from the public from the sidewalk out front. There's actually a sidewalk along the parking, and there's a sidewalk along the buildings here on for both sides. And we can put signage out front to give access for pedestrians to go through this driveway, which there is no parking past this point. This is just existing driveway essentially. There's only 3 spots here. We give access to the public access. Also to note that this is 640 Water Street, and this is 650 Water Street. 650 is also owned by the same owner. So any type of agreement as far as sharing the driveway, which currently is shared, should not be any kind of issue. Revert back to the floor plan. On the right here is the first floor plan of the building. From the front side of the building, there'll be a stair over here in the corner that allows access to the upper floor residential units. And then towards the center of the building will be the main access to the building. And right now we're thinking, possibly a restaurant. So we've shown a commercial kitchen along with a dining patio along the exterior. It may also be a retail unit. There is no current tenant scheduled to go in this building at this time. But we have a outdoor dining patio that has a railing that's relatively see-through along the back of the building. In the corner here is going to be access for the actual private access for the tenant for deliveries or garbage that's taken out of the building, as opposed to utilizing the front entrance. To the left here is the second floor of the building. So you'll come up the stair and you'll enter this outdoor walkway that's here. That'll give you access to, there's a 1-bedroom unit right here. And then both these other units are studio type units or which do not have a separated bedroom. And it's based on the square footages that are required by the ordinance. We revert back to the one other thing I wanted to highlight is on the landscape plan. As you see, there's landscaping all along the waterfront here. And one thing more important here is I have taller arborvitae plants here. And the intent is to screen screen the, backdoor access to the building and also screen a dumpster enclosure. So in the future, as these plants grow, dumpster enclosure and the condenser, none of this will really be visible from the water view or from the pedestrian access along the water. There was a recommendation, let me refer to it here. Initially made to table it, but since that recommendation, we've proposed a solution I think that would work well to address the dumpster enclosure. Also, as far as any agreements for access to that, I think those are minor items that we can take care of, and they can be hopefully reviewed administratively. So we'd like to get this project approved tonight so we can continue working on it. There's a lot more work to be done. Of course, with this approval, we're not receiving any building permit or nothing. We still have a lot of work here before we can actually start on it, and we'd like to keep this project moving forward. Is there any questions?
We can allow questions at this time. One of the questions I guess I would have, Daniel, this really relates to the building of it, not so much the approval. But if you are putting in a full commercial kitchen, you'd have to meet all the requirements of how you would protect the residential that's above, because there's differences between if you have just kind of like a burner or like a microwave type of thing in the first level versus a full commercial kitchen, correct?
Yes. There, just in any building having residential over top of commercial, there's going to be at least a 1 hour fire rating between those floors. So there'll be a continuous fire rating between the commercial level and the upper residential units.
And that would be sufficient for a restaurant with a full commercial kitchen.
Yes, yeah, we're planning on meeting all building codes, and these type of items would typically be reviewed on the next phase of this, which would be submitting for a building permit. We still have to develop those drawings, which is typical. There's a lot more drawings that'll be necessary for actual construction of this building, and that would be the next item that would, after this approval, that'd be the next item that we'd be working on.
Okay. Now, with the, at one point you might be aware we had a pre-application meeting probably over a year ago when they were thinking about developing both 640 and 650 kind of almost together, but doing one building first and the other. I know this is a standalone application, but like the public walkway, to get into the access, if you wanted to come off by where the boat dock is, you would need 650. And I know we can't ask for 650's easement or to provide that in the application for 640, but do you know what the plans are with 650? Since it is the same owner?
Well, there's actually, I think the owner, Jack, is on this if you wanted to comment on it.
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Jack Brown. I'm with AMK Holdings. We're the owners of both of these properties. And you would be right. We did start to go down a path of doing sort of a tandem development of both of these properties at the same time. The reason why we stopped was because we were approached by Alec and Lindsay Payleitner, who ended up opening Saga Taco on the bottom level, as I'm sure you're aware, of 650 Water Street, and essentially turned that building into a sufficient enough income generator between the short-term apartments upstairs and the restaurant, where we delayed essentially the redevelopment of that parcel so that they could open the restaurant. The building wasn't in as much of disrepair as 640. We were going to develop them separately anyway. What I can tell you is that if and when we develop 650 Water Street, our intent would be, I think it is a little silly, a public walkway that kind of stops right there, and it would make sense to continue it on if and when we were to ever redevelop 650 Water Street. We would do the same sort of thing we're doing right now. I can't answer the question on when we would ever redevelop it because, number one, Saga Taco has a longer term lease, and number two, I can't necessarily predict what's going to happen in 5 years, but ultimately that would be our intent if and when we ever redevelop that parcel.
No, it makes sense. And also in the next 5 years, you could end up not being the owner. I mean, it's potential.
Yeah, you never know.
Right.
I will just touch on, I know it was mentioned a minute ago, we are having Fishbeck, who was the company that surveyed both of these properties as part of this redevelopment. We are going to have them working on, we are having them work on the easement agreement, not only for public access, but also just between both 640 and 650 Water Street for when cars enter and exit, there needs to be an easement agreement between the two. So we are working on that, and Fishbeck, our company, is going to handle that process. Because we own both properties, obviously, it's not a problem.
Correct. Yeah, that was one of the questions I was going to ask next was about easements, but you've already touched on it, so I appreciate that.
Yep.
Other questions? Any other questions from other commissioners?
Yeah, I have a question. So your rendering shows you doing the improvement of the public access concrete, the rendering showed it concreted. That's your intention, is to finish that walkway?
That is our intention. Yeah, it's concrete now technically, and it would just, in my opinion, make sense because we're going to have to pour new concrete as part of the development just to have it concrete. There'll be a level of delineation or separation just between, based on his site plan there, where you can, like, it'll be clear what's what, even though it's technically going to all be concrete. And I'll just touch on the restaurant component of it. I mean, we own multiple properties in Saugatuck, and our family, I'm from the Ann Arbor area. We spend tons of time in Saugatuck as a family, which is part of the reason why we invest in the area. I envision a restaurant going in that space, of course, but it doesn't necessarily mean there will be. But we are designing it to try to attract a restaurant for that space. But again, we don't have a tenant lined up. If you know of anybody, let me know. But so, that's that's to answer the question about the commercial kitchen. We're not installing a kitchen. We're not. It'll be the commercial space as part of construction will be what I refer to, or what we refer to as gray boxed, so that whoever comes forward that wants to potentially lease it can kind of do their own design inside and construction potentially. But we do want to build it as if someone could do a restaurant there, to make it as easy as possible for a restaurateur to do something there.
Great.
Any other comment was you mentioned the stamped hardy board. When you go to the historic commission, you may have some discussions there of what they'll allow. The wood pattern on the hardy board, this concrete.
Yeah.
They may, there's some things at the historic commission where they have a different opinions on those.
Yeah, understood. We know it's sort of open-ended to essentially receive their approval. And when we feel the design of the building would fit in, we purposely didn't maximize height and ask for too much, because we want to do a responsible building that fits in, that is representative of the community as it is as a whole. We didn't necessarily want to do one big monstrosity on both of these parcels. So we feel the design of the building, even using modern materials to sort of look and fit into the community, was Dan did a good job, in my opinion. I know I don't make the final determination on that, but yes, we understand we have to work with the historic commission on ultimate fit, finishes, colors, textures, materials, and all that sort of stuff. And we're open for feedback.
Russ?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman Mans. Mr. Boggs and Mr. Brown, thank you for being here this evening. Question for Grayson. The Historic District Commission will require a demolition permit to be issued in order for it to be removed. And has that even taken place yet?
That is not.
Okay, thank you. I don't see the building being any historical significance. Used to be a laundromat for many of years, for some of you that may not have been here during those times. And for a long time was Big Lake Outfitters. Dave Engel and his family ran a really good business out of there, and it hasn't been used for a couple of years. The reason I mention that is I have concerns about this from a couple different perspectives. One is the use. That area down in Water Street, I live just a block and a half away down there quite a bit. And it's a fairly, even with the current businesses and even with Big Lake Outfitters not being there any longer, it's still a very busy area. Ida Red's across the street. Saugatuck has been incredibly successful and brought a lot of folks, a lot of cars and people, the Star of Saugatuck down the street. It's rather intensive already. And I believe that this will impact this in not a good way in terms of use and the impact to that neighborhood. And I speak as a neighbor of this area. So I have concern about the use of this. The short-term rentals, of course, will bring in, even though there's just 3 units, I can impact, despite the comment that was made, I think by Mr. Boggs about not a lot of in and outs, there will be a lot of in and outs from the short-term rentals. There will be additional cars, 3 off-street spots. The city doesn't have a requirement for spots for the short-term rental, so we don't have anything to play off of that, but that's going to be in a pretty intensive use. A restaurant will be a further intensive use. I have concerns about those. The other thing is, I appreciate the architectural renderings that were provided. I'd like to see architectural renderings that actually show this building in conjunction, I'm not sure what my words are here, with the buildings and context around it, so we can do a 360. What you can just do on Google by dialing up the property, you can do a 360 and see how this looks. These renderings are great, but they don't give me any type of sense of proportion to the surrounding buildings, to the Bayside Inn next door and to the what's Gleason's and now Saga Taco next door, or Ida Red's across the street. I think that's, in my mind, that's just something we should have to be able to see so we can understand how this is going to be in terms of context, the size. Even though it's 2 stories, it's certainly a better presentation than what we saw previously. There was pretty intensive use that was suggested previously. This is a far better improvement. I really appreciate the public access to the waterfront, which meets our waterfront goals. That's incredibly supported. I support that. That's great. But I really would like to see a 3D rendering. I think just in this day and age, it's so easy to produce it and show the buildings next to it. Can go look at it from the river, et cetera. Just because of that view to the river, which is actually something that this planning commission has talked about. We did studies 2 years ago on this. Our residents and visitors told us views and access to the water are sacrosanct. We cannot compromise that.
All right, well, we'll move on to the public comment. With public comments as similar to the previous, just give us your name and address. If you're in the room, you would come up to the microphone. If you're online, raise your hand and limit those comments to 3 minutes. We have one in the room.
Thank you. My name is McKenna Bethke. I'm an attorney, and I'm representing the owners of property located at 618 Water Street. We did send in a letter earlier. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that, about just some concerns that we have with this development. It does sound like with that dumpster being moved, and the waterfront access being guaranteed, that does kind of address my first point on here. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to the rest of my points on here. Our main concern is compatibility with a land use plan, which is a requirement per the city ordinances that for the criteria that must be met. It's one of the mandatory criteria. The Saugatuck land use plan really emphasizes that riverview, light and airflow, and discourages what it says is Bigfoot houses. I know this isn't a house, but Bigfoot buildings, those large buildings that take up a lot of space. This is a very large rectangular building. It's requiring some setback modifications, 0 feet for the front yard, and it's taking up a lot of space. So we're really concerned about blocking that river view, blocking that airflow through the area, and just overall changing the feel of the neighborhood, which is very important. I also want to mention the short-term rentals are on dwelling units because of that exterior hallway. If that exterior hallway had one more wall, it would be considered an inn, and the lot size is significantly too small for an inn to fit there. So I think that's just something to be considered. We know it's not an inn, but it's trying to fit the character of a large inn, or not a large inn, but a large building with an inn into a very small lot. So those are just our main concerns. And then again, I don't want to be too repetitive because we sent that letter in as well, but thank you.
Thanks, McKenna.
Thank you. And thank you for the letter. I know it was just put on our desk, so everybody does have a chance to kind of read through it as we're going through this meeting. Anyone, there's no one else in the room. Anyone online? Seeing none, then we will close out the public comments. And obviously we had the letter and the presentation today with their concerns about it, which then moves us on to commissioners' deliberation. And I know, Russ, you had already kind of expressed some of your concerns. Others who have questions or thoughts in regards to this? Because I have several, but I'll wait.
I'll comment. When we went through the waterfront preservation, we showed buildings very similar to this. This is what, we definitely wanted to squash down to the 2 stories. They've given the big clear access and they've accommodated the walkway along the water. Comments are positive about the adjacent property. So I hear some good things about it. I'm willing to listen to some of the other concerns, though.
Couple. Bob, do you have anything?
I was just going to ask, Grayson, based on what we now know, your recommendation or the city's recommendation was that we table this. Would that still be the recommendation?
I believe that that still could be a valid recommendation. It would really depend on if the commission feels they can work together to come up with that easement agreement that would meet your standards to feel comfortable enough before, for that to be approved administratively, or if you would want to be able to see that again.
Thank you.
Couple things that, I had in relation to even some of the comments that were made by our guest tonight, McKenna. Before this was rezoned as a waterfront preservation district, it was Water Street North. And Water Street North actually had 100% lot coverage allowance. You could build with no side setbacks. The river setback, waterway setback was like 15 feet. So when we put the whole waterfront preservation, and we didn't put a lot coverage, but we did require a minimum of that 20-foot. And you can do it as 10-10, like a 10 feet minimum on each side, or you could do all the way to the property line on one, long as you gave 20 feet or more, and they're talking about 35 feet here. We also allowed in waterfront preservation up to a 2.5-story building. I know that was a lot of the questions, a lot of things in the survey was, what was the appropriate height? And there was some, that felt that maybe even like a 3-story, depending upon whether it was a pitch roof, but we toned it back to 2.5 as a maximum. So they are looking at, 2 stories, because I know there was one time where we were talking about they could have like a little rooftop with half of the building if they wanted to, for the apartments. I think I appreciate the applicant, being upfront that they're going to be building these as short-term rentals, because you also could have just said you're going to have 3 apartments there and then applied, that would take away some of people's concern about it being a short-term rental. But we also understand that. When I think about the short-term rental, I know there's parking, I know there's some of the issues, but it goes back to my time anyway on the planning commission and then knowing council, was that when we were looking at putting any type of restrictions or caps on short-term rentals in the R1s, we were talking about how we would strive to see if there's ways that we could incorporate and build more opportunities for some tourist, accommodations within the city of Saugatuck. And then if it couldn't be within the city of Saugatuck, could we look outside with our neighboring cities, to have something else, maybe like even on Blue Star was mentioned. So this kind of fits in similar to what we did with some other properties downtown, that the idea is this would provide 2 or 3 additional rental opportunities that may offset some of the, the loss of licenses down the road within some of the R1s. So these are just thoughts that I have as to why I can kind of see it positive, where it meets some of the things regarding the waterfront preservation district, as well as some of the goals that we set up when we were doing other things within the city, like the short-term rental caps. So that was a few things that at least I kind of thought. I was looking at this and when we was talking about being tabled, I even had a discussion with Grayson. I said, if we can have some of these changes made, I know we always like to be able to see the full language, but I think it's, and sometimes we can also kind of look at it and say that if Grayson and our legal counsel are able to review like an easement structure or the final plans, you can always, have an approval here contingent upon, administratively signing off on these other items that are kind of listed there. And I think, the easement, and then even like the rest is, think of if we wanted to see more drawings before you can move forward, but at least they would know whether or not the PUD has been approved.
So if we were going to administratively approve the signage for the access to the sidewalk, what would that look like? Like what standard would you use to decide if it was okay?
For signage?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would want you to be as specific as possible in your motion, saying exactly what you would want the signage to say.
Mhm.
Perhaps the exact location and even the intent of what the signage is supposed to do, because then that leaves some discretion for the admin to kind of make sure that your intent is going through when it's proposed back to us.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not sure I could be that specific.
Yeah.
Tonight on the fly, so.
And they may have an example that they'd like to share. I'm not sure. I know that they had brought up the subject of signage to me today, so.
Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mr. Boggs or Mr. Brown, how many slips are behind both 640 and 650? Do you know total number of slips? Both slips?
Yeah, I can answer that. They're behind 650, which is the Saga Taco building. There are 4 slips, all are leased to charter fishermen, including Mr. Engel, and Mr. Tony Wolte. So 4 slips behind 650, and then technically there are 4 slips behind, or even 5, I guess, behind 640 Water Street. But over time, those docks and what word is sort of, so there's really only like 2 what I would consider usable slips behind 640 Water Street. It's not part of the approval, but we do plan on redoing the docks behind both buildings at some point in the future, just because having a nice new building with dingier docks doesn't look great. We haven't even started that process yet. The docks layout won't be necessarily any different. They'll just be newer and more usable, specifically behind 640.
Thank you. Where I'm going with this is behind 650 for the charter boats. There was some discussion at some point, this may be a question for Mr. Brown, there's some discussion at some point that that lease was going to be terminated for those docks for future use by something other than the charter boats. And the last I heard is there's been an extension to that through 2027, and I don't want to be quoted on that. That's just what I've heard.
Yeah, no, that's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, we weren't obligated to give them every year since we've owned the properties, specifically the Engels and also Mr. Wolte. We're concerned that we didn't want to lease or that we wouldn't renew the lease to them. And frankly, we don't have any issue with charter fishermen. In fact, we kind of like that. But nonetheless, we agreed to extend them for 3 years to give them sort of peace of mind, and also us peace of mind, not having to worry about leasing them in and year out. So your statement is accurate. They're leased through 2027 at this moment in time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the slips behind 640 have not been used for a couple of years because the business has been closed. So I don't know if there's been any transient docks there or.
Yeah, there's one gentleman, I believe, out of Grand Rapids who has leased what I refer to as slip 8 behind 640 since we've owned it for the last 2 years.
Okay.
That's the only slip that we have leased behind 640. And frankly, I don't know how much he actually uses it. We do advertise one of the slips on a platform called DocShare, I think it is. We have a short-term rental management company in the area, and they handle that, but I don't think it actually gets used all that often, as far as I understand.
Okay. This all ties into the use concerns that I have. Love the fact that the charter boats are going to continue there. They've been there for as long as I have memories of boats being there. My dad had a boat there when I was young, and his neighbor, Ron Westrate, was one of the first charter boats along with the Ingalls. So that's been a long-term use. I'm glad to see that continuing. What that creates, though, if you go down there any early morning during season, there are usually trucks parked up and down Water Street between Spear and Francis. So with the addition of 3 short-term rentals, potential addition of a restaurant, some retail, there's going to be some very intensive use of the area down there, as well as a lot of traffic, foot traffic going in and out of the docks themselves through the area that is not really well defined on the plan either. I know that was brought up in our recommendation too. I personally need to see a better representation of what that's going to look like, is how people are actually going to get there. And then what the consideration is going to be for all the traffic that goes between the docks and the street for the charter boats, as well as potential use of the 4 docks behind 640. It's going to be very intensive use, and that's one of my major concerns about the character of the neighborhood. It's already busy, and this is going to, I think, take it to another level.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that. And,
Thank you.
I don't know who's going to lease the first floor. As long as they pay their rent,
Of course.
as long as they fit in, I guess I'm okay with it. But whether it's a restaurant or a retailer or what it is, it obviously will have to fit into approved uses for the ordinances in the code. One thing I will point out that I didn't mention earlier is the first iteration of this building that I don't think we submitted as part of the formal PUD application was to actually have it be longer. And this touches on kind of the concern of, blocking water views and so on and so forth. It was going to be a longer building with 4 units and no parking.
Good.
I made the decision to shrink the building down because I thought a smaller building would be, number one, more favorable amongst the community. Number 2, wouldn't block as much of the water view. Number 3, to use that space for parking for the short-term rentals, to not create more parking headaches for our short-term rentals on the city usage where parking is a premium, right? So, we made that decision even at the expense of potentially having more leasable square footage and another potential short-term rental unit, frankly. It was also important to me to try, instead of hiding the fact that it's going to be a short-term rental is an approved use in that district, is just tell you that's our plan. We're not trying to hide anything or pull any fast ones. This is what the plan is and this is what it's going to take. So having the parking for the short-term rental units won't take up any city parking, any other tourist parking, any resident parking that they may want to utilize, even at the expense of having a potential larger, more income-producing building. It also provides more room for access, to your point, to the waterfront that we're creating, as well as the docks, as well. It gives us more flexibility on how we create that and what that looks like.
So essentially, thank you. And again, I'm not trying to come against this negative. I think the concept's great. I'm just thinking about the longer term impact of this on that area of particularly my neighborhood as a neighbor. And so I think that the access, though it's not on our plans, is going to essentially be as it is today. It's a driveway. And if you're going to put 3 spots next to the building for use of those short-term rentals, I just don't see there's going to be room there for a true dedicated public sidewalk, for lack of a better term, for access to this. So you're going to have issues with cars pulling in and out, with pedestrians, and I see this getting quite a bit of interest from the public because of the Spear Street boat launch, which is just to the north of the building at 650. And as you mentioned, once the future takes place and you get a connection between the public access behind this project as well as behind 650, I think you're getting a lot of people are going to show some interest in that, are going to see public and walk down there. So that's going into my calculus too, in terms of how this is going to impact that area. And it's potentially going to be, again, more intensive use. I feel like I've done most of the talking this evening. I'm very curious what my other planning commissioners have kind of their thoughts on this. Am I way off the mark on this, Gardner, or?
I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate how this has been used historically, but I also am kind of with CJ here, and how we're developing the waterfront preservation, this is kind of what we contemplated with coming in here. And also I, have admired what Jack and his partner have done in other parts of town too, with Happy Stance and the old bank building. I think they've contributed a lot, and I have reason to believe that the plans they're putting forward here, they're going to stay true to them, and they're going to make happen what they're saying is going to happen based on their record here. So I am, as of now, okay with going forward.
I'm generally supportive of this. I do. I would like to see more about how the public's going to be directed to the dedicated area. I think that's the benefit of the bargain for a PUD is the easement we get. So I want to make sure people know it's there and it's not just something you only know if you live here, that's available.
Russ, isn't there a wayfinding standard or a city council motion to try to standardize all of our wayfinding signs in the process?
Yes, there is some discussion around that, Commissioner Badrak. I think that's going to be down the road a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But So
Because
I was just thinking of what Craig said about how do we give Grayson some instruction on how to do some approval? Signage should be readily visible from Water Street and meet the city branding and wayfinding standards, I thought would at least get
Yeah,
us something. If it's that far down the road, maybe,
I think it is.
yeah, okay.
Personally. And again, when I heard the signage by Commissioner Baldwin, I'm not aware of any signs in town that direct people to the public waterfront.
I don't,
I don't think there are.
water pulls everybody.
Yeah, this brings up a larger point of, here's how you get down to the public waterfront, right? I mean, folks that come here know it's there, but, so anyway,
Right.
good comment, good question.
So that's, yeah, I think we can come up with something to give Grayson some rules on that signage, but
Yeah.
Grayson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the zoning ordinance sign regulations do say that directional freestanding signs on private property for the direction of traffic shall not exceed 2 square feet in size per sign and should be approved as part of an overall site plan by the planning commission.
Yeah, I think probably the one point that Russ has raised and was discussed, if I was going to require to see more, would be something about how does a pedestrian get back there? Because that's my first thought was, if people are using that whole space, it's kind of like to traverse back to the waterfront, then you do have, a certain degree of risk, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, if it meets our standards, I got to factor in risk if you're going to approve the PUD. But there will be a tendency, even if there is a walkway that's dedicated, a sidewalk. I just know when I look at some of the other parking lots that we have along the water, there's sidewalks, but I see people walk, catty corner through them constantly, and there's cars backing up or pulling in. So I'm aware that that would be necessary. I'd like to actually see, that we're planning to have a walkway and where the walkway is going to be and how you would have signage. But I'm not opposed to moving forward with definition that it would have to be something that is presented to, Grayson for the approval to make certain that it meets the standards that we've set up, in the ordinance.
Right. I mean, we have to be consistent with our ordinance requirements.
Absolutely.
And I would say that, first of all, we're dealing with a business owner here who has a proven track record and has managed the businesses really responsibly and added value to this community. He's obviously, I don't mean to be speaking for you, Jack, but he's obviously agreeable in terms of the feedback that we provide and wanting to not only meet his own business objectives, but also make sure that his company is acting consistently with the city in terms of what our objectives are. I think we should find a way. I mean, personally, I would approve this with conditions, the conditions that we're talking about. And as for the busyness, Russ, I mean, basically what you've described is pretty much what happens all over the city every day in the summertime in terms of just the amount of traffic, the trucks. Sometimes when I come down here in the morning, it's like, wow. So on the one hand, yeah, it makes it difficult for some of us to get around, but on the other hand, it's what happens in a busy city. And I think we're obligated to do what we can to minimize inconvenience for visitors as well as our own citizens. But in the final analysis, that kind of activity and energy really is what creates a vibrancy in terms of the city. So, enough said.
Well said. I think the one thing when you're talking about the owner and coming forward was just even the comment that we had raised about the dumpster and the placement. And then knowing that before this meeting, they came back and said, okay, we're going to go down from 4 parking spaces to 3. We're going to move this to try to mitigate, that concern, kind of gives you comfort that if we did have conditions, that they would likely be able to meet them. And I would feel comfortable with Grayson being, the administrator of it. And then to the point of the vibrancy of the city, I know it's a tough call always to try to say, how much expansion do you allow? But that's why we put the rules in with the setback of the 2 feet. And the whole idea is, how many times have you been downtown where somebody says, oh my God, the waterfront is so beautiful. And, as they go down, they want to know, like, especially like when Mermaid closed, everyone's like, why is that place, kind of sitting empty? Because people enjoy sitting on the water and dining in that. And when you look at other cities that are on the river or along lakes, they primarily do have those type of establishments and it draws people in. And so I think it does fit with kind of what our master plan and what our long-term goals for the waterfront are.
He's given 33 feet 9 to, on that side, which is more than what we require. Cars are gonna block a little bit of that, but he's given quite a bit of space.
So how do we make a motion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, concerning the motion,
Yes.
one thing I wanted to mention too, that this is a recommendation to the city council. The city council will also have to hold a public hearing, and this is a rezoning to a PUD overlay district with an associated PUD plan. So there's a couple weeks, for public notice to occur and before the next council meeting is scheduled. So even if you had some conditions, Grayson would be able to confirm those, with Trent, myself, ahead of that city council meeting. So that'd be another way for just to ensure that they're met. We could check them before the city council gives final, their final say on the project. And we would also have to prepare a formal ordinance for that rezoning to overlay, which would reference any other conditions of approval as well as all the details of the site plan and modifications.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. It's good comments.
One other question about that eventual presentation to the city council. Can we have a 3D, Mr. Boggs? How quick could you, or how easily is it to produce the kind of rendering I'm speaking of? Because that really helps people. I speak from experience on the Historic District Commission and the Planning Commission. That visual really helps people kind of understand how it's going to look, even though there's going to be modifications, of course, during the process, but just how it's going to fit in with the neighborhood, how it's going to look next door to the Saga Taco building, to the Bayside, how easy is it to do that? I see it done all the time, so I'm assuming it's pretty straightforward.
I mean, renderings are done all the time of the buildings we're developing. It's a little more complicated to do neighboring buildings because you have to physically in some way measure those buildings. So that would be a challenge. I'd have to look into that. There is a 3D model of this building does exist. All the perspective views are of the 3D model.
Right. But in relation to the buildings aside, and I understand what you're telling me that you have to have measurements of those buildings. I would think you probably get this from some of the zoning maps. I mean, I'm not looking for something that's going to be HD TV quality, but something that I think will help people understand.
Anything you just like on the map, take the maps and put the new layout on
Right.
top of that?
Yeah, something like that. Again, I'm not a CID person. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you mean
I think that would go a long way to help you.
Do you mean taking it from a 2D perspective, looking down on it?
Well,
Could you do like a street view, like if you're
You're standing in front of it on Water Street and you can see the buildings on each side of it and just kind of see how
the
it
height,
compares and the height and how.
Yeah, because
and the
there's
density and.
we can look into that, but keep in mind there is no maps or no information giving you sizes, heights of buildings and whatnot. There is nothing like that. They will give you the square footage of or dimensions of the buildings.
No, I think it was more of a visual. You weren't looking to get like square footage, height. It was like if you had a street view that showed what's on each side and then then a 3D kind of image of your building instead of having what's there at 640 now, you kind of blank that out and you drop your building in. I don't know how hard that is to do, but.
Yeah, I'm just asking because I think that's something that would be of great benefit to people seeing this down the road.
Any other discussions here?
Do
we have-
There's a couple different, there's the 0 feet at the front. Really,
Right.
no issue with that one.
I didn't have an issue.
Yeah, 15 feet based upon getting the walkway. That's what we've
Exactly.
already talked about. Took care of the trash can. And then the minimum parking.
He meets that, yeah.
Yeah.
So really the variance that they're asking for with the PUD are somewhat minor compared to many
Right.
PUDs that we've seen come before us. So I think, the challenge is, since we didn't have a suggested potential motion is to kind of come up with the motion that would have the specific enough language if we were going to go the route of a motion for approval. Do we feel comfortable to have a motion that would move us forward,
Yeah.
some type of an approval, then should we try to draft one? Grayson, do you want to take a shot at it? Or Dave? Did you have time to kind of like put together what would be like a recommended motion that we would, again, we're recommending to council, but we're recommending that, we're approving it with the recommendation of council. I realize that.
Proving it with conditions.
Yeah, it would be something to the effect of a motion to recommend approval of the PUD rezoning to include the plans dated 11/18/25 with 12/18/25 revisions, including the 3 zoning modifications, including the front yard setback at 0, waterfront setback at 15, and parking lot setback at 5 feet. In addition to satisfaction of section 154114, application data requirements, items I, J, and K. So those are the last 3 items that were, that's the legal documentation, the schedule, and the draft documents for ownership. And I guess what else would be the signage for the walkway easement? And I think that would be it. So I was thinking out loud there, I can probably formalize that or restate that if you'd like.
Second.
But yeah, basically a recommendation of the plan and the PUD overlay. Reference the submission, the original submission date and the revision date. The 3 modifications, as well as the 3 pieces of information needed at the end of the staff report. And the sign for the walkway.
I'll give it a try.
I saw you two, right? So I didn't.
I'll make a motion to approve the PUD rezoning overlay based upon the 12/18 presentation with the modifications, with the following modifications. Back to the front setback of 0, the waterfront setback of 15 based upon maintaining the public access, the minimum parking setback of 5 feet, of 20 feet. And then
It's 5 feet.
5 feet, of 5 feet. Then provide signage matching the Saugatuck wayfinding signing standards as available and viewable from Water Street. And then the other 3 things, that's I, J, and K from the packet,
So 150,
which
154, 114.
Grayson hooked this up in the package. I, J, and K. Legal document of single ownership of control. Schedule A, specific schedule intended development and structure details, including the phasing and timing of all proposed improvements. A draft of ownership and governance documents. These documents shall include the following items: deed of ownership, warranties, a list of all covenants, conditions, and restrictions, associated bylaws as described in the packet.
Easement agreement.
I mentioned that with the sidewalk, but just to make sure that the one modification of the 15 feet includes the easement agreement and for the water access.
Can I ask that you add in, it was also contingent upon the original plans from November 18, 2025.
Oh, it's not the ones as of
It's
today?
both.
Both, okay, the original presentation from 11/25
11/20,
With the-
11/18/25.
11/18/25.
25.
with the revisions of today, 12/18/25.
You have that?
Yeah.
Usually mark.
No, exactly.
Wow, my hand hurts, but we're good.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Bobby. This would be a roll call vote.
Badrick,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Gardner,
I'm voting no because I don't think it's consistent with our land use plan, as well as I have concerns about the access to the public spaces that they've made accommodations for.
Gaunt,
Yes.
Mariner,
Yes.
and Mans.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Thanks for being willing to kind of work with us thus far, and we're going to count on it moving forward with hopefully getting that done before it would go onto the council's agenda for their public hearing.
Chairman Mans, so we have a council meeting on Monday night, and I update as your council representative to the council. So I will try to keep that as short as possible to say that we're going to be getting some additional information back for presentation that we think probably maybe in January. That, Grayson, you think doable, that we're going to probably see it in January, probably your second meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And again, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Brown, and thank you, Mr. Boggs. I do appreciate Commissioner Marino's comments about your work in the community. Acknowledge that you've been a great partner in a lot of projects in town. So my concern with this is not with you, but with the project. So,
No,
but thank,
and I appreciate your feedback and thank you for your time.
yeah, appreciate
you.
the public access too. It's going to be, I look forward to it.
So that closes out the public hearing on 6:40. So moves us on to new business item B, the planning commission bylaws proposed updates. They're in our kit starting on page 47 in the packet. Grayson, you want to, just going to tell us a little bit more about,
Yeah,
this is pretty self-explanatory, but yeah.
really just came up as I was reviewing for the new year and election of officers coming up. And I just wanted to reference the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. I noticed there was just a few things that were out of alignment with that. And then I noticed that a few minor things such as the start time of the meetings is just noted wrong on the existing bylaws, and it's just a few simple amendments proposed.
Question I did have on that, Grayson. Does the Michigan Enabling Act say that they can only be 1-year terms?
Yes.
So we've operated with the 2-year for many years.
It may have been amended more or less recently, but when I was reading through it, it did say 1 year.
Okay.
And what are the duties of a secretary for the planning commission?
That is a great question, and
I will just say for HDC,
it's
they have no duties.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you just get the chair next to the chair.
Oh. Okay.
So any other questions on these changes? Comments?
I mean,
Just logistics so in the next January, we'll reset and add a secretary.
yes.
Can I ask a question? I appreciate the secretary position being brought up. Does that have to be a commissioner? Could it not be Grayson or Sarah? Does it have to be one of the appointed?
It does say that it needs to be a commissioner, I believe. When I was reading through it, I believe it said a member of was the
Planning
language.
commission.
Yeah.
I saw it here.
Yeah, I'm just curious if that's seemed to me to be kind of incongruous, right?
We had to do the same thing on HDC a few years ago.
Yeah, I know. I just
Yeah.
asked me.
I mean, it does say.
They come down on us if we appointed one of you secretary? I don't know.
It
There's
does say just,
officers of the planning commission, which the planning commission technically is not,
yeah.
is the commissioners.
yeah, it does say elect a chairperson and secretary from its members. So
Correct.
lucky Grayson, I guess.
Thank you.
So that means you get to do like 7 swearing ins every year.
Yeah.
So you're secretary pro tem.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the work needed credit.
Right. Do we have,
And FYI, whoever misses the meeting is automatically voted secretary, so you don't want to be here.
That's absent at your own risk.
so we would need a motion to approve this, correct?
Mr. Commissioner, I will make a motion to approve the There's not a motion in here, but let me make one just a second here. To amend the bylaws of the planning commission as presented in the memo dated December 18th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion, it's been seconded. We'll just ask for roll call vote, please.
Patrick,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Gaunt,
Yes.
Mirano,
Yes.
Inmans.
Yes. Moves us on to new business item C, which is in our packet on page 53, the 2026 meeting dates. Do we just have to acknowledge this or do we actually have to approve this?
You have to approve them.
Yeah, because I thought in the bylaws it says it will be on the third Thursday, so.
It can be a voice vote.
Sure. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to
Counter me.
approve the dates as provided in the 12/18/2025 packet.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Seeing none, the 2026 schedule of meetings has been approved as presented. Which concludes our new business, which takes us to old business. The item that we become also familiar with. The signage ordinance has been updated and included in our packets as well as a clean version was in our original packet. And now we have been given the red line version that came in an email earlier today as well as been handed out here. Grayson, did you want to kick this off or do you want to have Trent go ahead and just go ahead and kick it off?
You see, I think we're at a pretty good point now that I think Trent will be able to.
But
Yeah, I agreed. And,
walk
and that
us
was,
through.
yeah, so normally I've been preparing a memo, but the changes were manageable enough this time that I thought the red line kind of explained them well. So I didn't provide a memo this month, but the changes should be consistent with what was discussed at the last meeting. I have a couple points to highlight, really two main ones. There was some discussion last time about dark sky friendly. And so on page, so let's see, page
two. Page two.
Two.
yeah, 2 is the definition, and then page 6 is the illumination requirements. We added dark sky friendly to both the internally illuminated and the externally illuminated signs. And the definition imposes some of the actual, I guess, requirements. I tried to keep it a little bit light-handed because there wasn't a whole lot of discussion last meeting about what exactly those standards would look like. Dark sky friendly provisions, while there are some that you kind of see consistently across various different ordinances and standards, they do vary a lot. And so there's a lot of different room there as far as how intense we want to be or how specific we want to be. And so for now, I just included a definition of dark sky friendly on page 2. And the sort of main things to note is that the lighting must be oriented in a downward fashion, fully shielded, meaning that the top of it generally has to be shielded so that the light can't percolate upwards. And then the kind of big thing, and I think where dark sky friendly came from originally when it started, is that you use certain light bulbs and colors of light that are shorter, they have less shorter wavelength light, and so they don't penetrate as far into the night sky and cause the light pollution that you'll often see when you're near a major city. And so I tried to keep it like that for now, but I think what would be a good point of discussion for the Planning Commission tonight is, do we like what we have currently? Do we want to add some more specific standards? Do we want to make those, I guess, in a way more tailored to each individual sign? So like the exterior illuminated signs would have to be pointed downward, fully shielded in certain parameters that way, whereas an internally illuminated sign, as long as it's kind of ambient light and it uses proper color of lighting or proper bulbs, for example, that one maybe wouldn't require as many provisions. And so kind of getting into the nuance on the dark sky friendly provisions and what we would want to see there is one point of discussion for tonight. As it currently stands, it's sort of just a requirement for all illuminated signs, but the actual standards themselves are relatively bare bones, being just the pointed downwards, fully shielded in appropriate colors of lighting. The second major point that I wanted to highlight is towards the end of the ordinance, page 13. Consistent with Councilman Gardner's comments last time, I added permitting requirements for signs, but I tried to mirror them off of what we were doing for sandwich boards. And so if you look at the very last provision in that red line, subsection 6, That's the provision that would allow for signs to be administratively approved by the zoning administrator if there was no changes from the previously approved sign. Now, the first time around and for changes, they'll have to come to city council for a sign that's going to be in the right of way. And that was, as we discussed last time, consistent with what's been sort of the city's policy as far as approving things in the right of way. And I had mentioned something last time about the city has a hardscape ordinance. It's section 96, I believe, of the city code. Yeah, chapter 96 of the city code, specifically 96.340 or 96.34, has specific standards for city council approval of certain installments within the right of way. Generally, this applies to, well, I guess it doesn't apply to signs. As I noted last time, the city's hardscape policy is silent as to signs. But I tried to mirror those because I think they make conceptual sense. And so the standards that you see here for approval in subsection 4, as well as the criteria for what must be in the permit application itself, is largely mirrored off of those current existing standards. And so that's kind of where those came from. And so the way it would work currently is any permanent sign, or I guess not permanent, but we've excluded flags from the permitting requirement, which I can get to in a second. But any sign that in the right of way that would require a permit must first come to council. If it's approved in the next year, they just want to do the same exact sign again, it can be administratively approved after that to try and decrease the administrative burden. So those are the two really main things that I think would warrant some discussion tonight. And then, of course, if there's any comments of sections that you guys have observed in the last month that you want to bring up and talk about, I'm happy to entertain those as well. And then the other changes that are indicated on the red lines, tried to fix the definition of portable signs, as Commissioner Baldwin pointed out last meeting. I removed the language in that definition, which is on page 3, carries over onto the top of page 4.
If I could just chime in on that.
Sure, yeah.
real quick. It looks like you still have reference to signs in, on, or against parked vehicles in that definition, which I think would still capture graphic wrapped vehicles that are parked in the street, which is what we were trying not to regulate, or at least what the consensus of the group was. Do you see what I'm saying?
So
You
signs
made an edit. You made an edit to the end of that definition,
Yep.
but you didn't. You still left in the last few words about signs on parked vehicles are portable signs, which are prohibited everywhere.
So your comment is we should probably get rid of signs on. I don't know. I guess inside is also could get rid of. What about against parked vehicles? I feel like that's different, I think, than a graphic wrapped vehicle. So
I mean,
we
a sign
wanna-
propped up against a car or truck or.
Correct, yeah. Do we want to leave that? So currently, all of these signs that would fall under this definition of portable signs would be prohibited outright. And so to Commissioner Baldwin's point, I think it's a good one. We don't want to regulate graphic wrapped vehicles. I think I used the definition of like a Meyer truck or an Amazon truck once in a prior meeting. And so if we strike or signs inside, comma, on, we would remove that. But I'm wondering, I guess, if we should leave against parked vehicles. Do we want to prohibit signs?
I would leave that in.
Okay, so leave against but remove. So
Yeah.
I'll make that strike and I'll strike signs on or inside of parked vehicles. And so now it would just be the sort of examples there and then any other sort of portable sign. I also added at the front of this definition, except for signage falling under another definition herein, because I think the way the definition is written, it lends itself to being applied broader than what it's designed to be. For example, certain temporary signs may fall into it or something of that nature. And so I just wanted to make it clear that this was limited to the specific signs that are easily movable and not permanently or temporarily attached to the ground. And so like sandwich board signs, for example, are probably not temporarily attached to the ground, but there's a separate definition that they would fall under. And so they wouldn't get roped into the portable signs and be prohibited by virtue of that. So that was the idea there. And so with that other change, as pointed out tonight, I think that would implement the changes that we're looking for there. And then, as I noted, those signs would be prohibited, and so we would be removing effectively regulations on vehicles that are themselves signs.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure, yeah.
Just a scenario. So if a person has their car parked on the corner and they want to put a garage sale sign on their car and tack it to the side of the car, that's a temporary sign that would not be in violation of this, right? This is we're talking about a sign that someone would put up against a vehicle to advertise something or whatever. But if you're just putting up a sign, I've never seen it happen, but I was thinking about some temporary situation. That would be a temporary sign. It would not be subject to this. Is that right?
It would be, I think, if it was leaned up against the vehicle, and
No,
that
I
was
understand taped to the side of the car. Just
oh, so yeah, with
hey, yard sale this way, that kind, where you normally see them put them on the corners or whatever.
right. I think with the comment tonight about signs inside or on parked vehicles, once that's stricken, I think your scenario would be allowed. It would
Okay.
not be, yeah, it would not be prohibited. It would probably fall under a temporary yard sign, I guess, which is kind of a
Yeah,
weird.
that's kind of where I was
Yeah,
going.
right.
Okay, thanks, Trent.
Yep. Yep. Other changes then are, like I said, they're pretty minor. If you flip through, you can kind of identify the red lines. Another big one was flags on page 8 of the ordinance. We had pretty good discussion about this last time, and so I think the direction was pretty clear. But the way it was written last month was that flags required a right-of-way permit, and we had some discussion about 7 feet above grade and what that would look like. And the direction that I heard from the planning commission is that we don't want to require permits for flags. And so the way it reads now is that flags are allowed; they don't require permits, so long as they don't cause an unreasonable obstruction to pedestrian or vehicular traffic or to the public right of way, which is then determined by the zoning administrator based on standards that I put into that provision, which is the degree of the obstruction, the location of the obstruction, and the degree of traffic within that area, as well as other relevant factors that Grayson or his predecessor would find relevant there. So I think that standard gives us a little bit of leeway to enforce against an egregious flag situation that's really causing obstructions to the right of way, or that's distracting or something like that to motorists. But this, I think, lessens the flag requirements as was sort of the direction last time. So they would no longer require permits, even if they're hanging above the right of way, so long as they don't cause obstructions. Flipping to the next page, page 9, temporary signs. We made this change based on, I think it just kind of made sense given where this draft had ended up, and really the changes to the on-site services provision. As you'll recall, when this started, it was meant to be kind of an exception to allow additional signage if a property is conducting certain services, landscaping, building contractors, plumbing, things of that nature, pest control. Now, the way that this provision functions is that normally a non-residential property would not be allowed to have any off-premise signs unless they're conducting on-site services, in which case they would be allowed to have up to 12 square feet of off-premise signs, as long as each sign does not exceed 6 square feet. And then the signs must be removed once those on-site services are concluded. And so that was just kind of an extension of where I think these provisions were falling. And so residential properties are still allowed to have the full 48 square feet of both either on-premise or off-premise signs. Non-residential properties typically can have 48 square feet of on-premise signs only. And then if there's on-site services offered on that non-residential property, they could have up to 12 square feet of off-premise signs, which would be, your contractor sign, your landscaper sign, things like that. I think those are mostly the changes that have been made to this draft. Oh, I'm sorry, one more. Page 12, small change, but important, I think. There was comment last time about sandwich board signs, and we had implemented a provision on page 12, subsection F, it's kind of in the middle of the page there, that made it so sandwich board signs shall not extend past the building frontage. But then I believe it was Councilman Gardner brought up that there are some of these that are approved to be elsewhere in the city. And so we tweaked this a little bit to say that unless approved out by the city to be elsewhere, essentially, which would just allow an avenue for that to continue if that's a desire that the city would want to continue. It wouldn't be like a per se invalidation of signs that extend past the building envelope. And I think now with those explanations, that's pretty much everything. So happy to take any questions or discuss scenarios or hypotheticals or however you guys want to work through it. But I think the draft's coming along pretty well.
Trent, question for you, and I'm excited by the dark sky friendly. I'm so happy that's been added to the ordinance, that this is something that we've needed for a while. Question though, does this include municipal lighting?
It would not necessarily include municipal lighting. There's, just take a step back. There's a body of case law out there that it's kind of an open question in a way as to whether or not a municipality is even subject to their own zoning regulations. It depends on what's going on, but that's kind of neither here nor there. The requirements, so that I guess what I'm saying is that the requirements would not necessarily compel the city to use dark sky friendly lighting. That might be a good choice, I guess, to follow your sign ordinances. But is your point in bringing that up, like, are you seeking like a specific exception for the city, or what are your thoughts?
As an elected official, I would certainly encourage the city to comply with this and to do the most that it can to, make it a dark sky friendly town. Where I'm going with this are the streetlights. They're probably the biggest, not just in Saugatuck, but in many communities, they're probably the biggest violators of any dark sky initiatives. And so, when these lights go out in town and consumers comes in and replaces them, they replace them like for like. Would they be compelled to, and they're available, I have one on my street. Drive down Spear Street, you'll see one, a dark sky friendly light. So they're there, they're available, but would this compel consumers to comply with dark sky lighting? Or is that something can't compel them, but we want to work with them to, we can't make them go swap them all out, but as they replace them, I think that should be an initiative we should be, speaking as a council member and a citizen, that's something we should be encouraging them to do. And they can't.
So they would not have to swap them out. They would have lawful non-conforming rights to the current lighting that they're using. But you're correct. As soon as they were to transition that sign lighting, or if it were to, if they were going to put a new sign in there, or really do anything that would cause them to lose their non-conforming status, they would have to then comply with the new regulations. So the dark sky friendly wouldn't require a widespread changing of all lights in the city, but it would phase them in essentially over time. And to your point about the city, it's kind of the same concept. Everything I've sort of learned with working with the city, I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't follow the dark sky friendly requirements. It seems like a very Saugatuck thing to do, and so they could be phased in over time. There would be no directive to just go do it immediately, because it is expensive to change every street light. Yeah, right.
Thank you. And then right below this one, feather flag sign. I could not find it in the revised ordinance. Feather flag signs are not permitted, period. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
We've approved them on some temporary basis for, I believe, the Saugatuck Douglas Historic Commission asked for feather flags over at the Pump House Museum a couple of years ago. And I think that was approved on a temporary basis. Would that still be allowed? And that's been few and far between that we've been asked to do that. Would that still be?
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say no, that currently feather flag signs are prohibited signs. So I guess that would not be allowed.
I'm not sure how we did that then.
I think right. I was just gonna say I think it was prohibited in the current sign draft too.
I believe it was, yes.
Yeah.
And then over to the annual right-of-way process. When I brought this to council at the council meeting, I didn't do a great job of making it a very summarized and understandable what I was trying to get from them. There was not a consensus in terms of whether they want to see these every year. I tried to pitch this as we're trying to find a way to make this easier for the city administration to approve these and not to have to keep bringing these back to council. It was kind of middle of the road. I didn't get one sense that they were going one way or the other. So this is something, Grayson, I would encourage you to work with Ryan and make sure that some of these changes are highlighted so the council does understand what this represents. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, especially given that it does take a little bit, like if council's used to having everything come to them for approval in the right of way, it would be taking something away.
And frankly, most times it's simply a line item and it's in a consent agenda and it's approved. There's very little discussion, so.
Okay, perfect. That's a good point, and I'll make sure that that's highlighted when we get there.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
None from me.
Good.
CJ? Nope.
Good job. Good job, Twelve.
I think it's very good, Trent.
Thank you. So I will, if there's any thoughts in the meantime, before, next meeting, we can discuss those or pass them on to Grayson and we can work on them. We can work them in that way. But otherwise, I'll defer to the commission, I guess, as to if you want to move to public hearing phase or if you want to start out the year with one more review session or something of that nature.
I don't need more review, but
I think if that change is made that was raised here tonight, I would be in favor of it moving to public hearing in the January meeting.
yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank
I know
you.
it's been a long process, but I think it's been
6
a
months?
good one.
When did we start science? Yeah, like June.
May or June,
Yeah.
first hit the agenda. Very good. Well, that closes out the sign ordinance updates, and we will have that as a public hearing on January's agenda. Communications, the only one we had was, of course, related to our public hearing. I'm not aware of any of the communications that came through. Board of Officers and Committees, we have none. We will open it up for public comment, but we have no one in the room and no one online, so we'll
His Royal
open
Highness,
that.
His Royal Highness.
Oh, HRH. I don't see a hand, so we open and close public comments, which takes us down to commissioner comments. We will start with our, over in the corner with Mr. Gardner. Commissioner Gardner.
I have no comments. Thank you.
I just hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday. Happy New Year. We'll see you next year.
Same. I hope everyone has that. Just going back to, what was it? 640 Water Street when we looked at it. I did want to make clear that I would love for nothing more for it to go back to what it was like, or just for it to be torn down and be a nice little park. I think that would be lovely, but I just want to acknowledge the direction that that part of town has gone and what we've enabled to happen there and what we've continued to enable through the C2 district that we've created there. So as much as I, have some general disdain for what I think the future of that area could be, I do think that we have to follow our ordinances and what we've mapped out, and that kind of is what influenced my vote there.
I'll jump over to Bob.
I think we had a really robust discussion this evening on several issues, which felt really good. And I appreciate all of that, all of the work that went into that and your candor. And I too wish everyone a safe and happy holiday.
Nothing today. Merry Christmas.
For me, it's the same thing. It's been great. The 2025, we look forward to 2026 and continuing with our master plan, which I think some of these discussions we had tonight will start to work into part of that master plan. But I wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season, happy new year. And here's to 2026.
To 2026.
With
I will
that,
make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
to adjourn. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you.